This is my introduction to Sis, and it was an intriguing introduction for sure. The sound overall varies from being mystical, like on the songs Double Rapture and Flower in Space, to being disco-y on the song Wooey, and even some electric jazz thrown in there with how the instrumentals progress on songs like Embodiment and Gazelle Rights. I enjoy the vocals as well, and some of the lyrical themes have a ground of interest to them, mostly because of just how mysterious the presentation of the EP is. But I feel like the scarce and scattered approach to lyrics and melodic qualities kind of impacted my enjoyment a bit. In some pockets of the EP, I felt like having a bit more emphasis on a vocal presence would have helped break up the long periods of time where the instrumental just isn't strong enough to hold its own. But that doesn't detract from the alluring soundscapes that I was hearing. I liked it. I definitely will keep an eye out for future stuff from them. It's a cool collection of vaporwave, breakcore, drum and bass, rave, and other forms of electronic music. It is filled with fast-paced beats, colorful rhythms, catchy grooves. The strongest songs for me were definitely the heavily atmospheric ones with easygoing grooves like Human: A Cosmic Terror, or Horror, apologize for that. Purple is the New Green, and The Brightest Green. There are a lot of varied sounds, but even then I did find myself getting some hits of deja vu throughout the album. Some of the drum and bass rhythms and backdrops ring a bit too similar to the ones being presented on other songs. Given that the runtime is only like 30 minutes, I felt like I was being driven in circles at times. Also, the signature that plays on every song, the Kaizo Worldwide, bitch, definitely did not do anything to ease that sensation I had. I also wasn't that big on the breakcore tracks. They felt pretty by the numbers and had very little complementary backings to make them stand out. But like I said, it's cool. A little bit of something for everyone. I have never been a fan of the Lumineers music, like, ever. I've always found their stuff incredibly boring, drab, soulless. Virtually every synonym of the word bland that exists, that's what I would use to describe the Lumineers. And this new album seems to have cranked all of those attributes to fucking 12. Not a single second of a single song caught my attention during my 2 listens because there is nothing interesting going on at all. Not the vocals, not the lyrics, not the sound, nothing. It's just nothing. I felt nothing. I'm sorry I'm not using other words to describe it, but I genuinely cannot find other ones to just express how nothing it is. It's devoid of any ambition or personality or refinement. I can't even laugh at it or make fun of it because it's so nothing. Not for me, not a fan. At this rate, I probably never will be. Probably the weakest Anix album I have heard, especially compared to his last 2, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I felt like those albums presented some pretty cutting-edge stuff in a very tight and focused package. Revenge's runtime is over an hour, and a good bit of it is pretty fluff, in my opinion. And for me, that's because when I started listening to some of these songs, I just started zoning out halfway through these songs. Like, the futuristic / industrial sound design and sound direction that the Anix is known for is still there. It's still stout, no question about it. And I do appreciate the attempts to try and bring some grunge into a sound. The issue is for me that these songs start off interesting and then just do not evolve in eventful ways, often overly relying on hooks and choruses that are not that strong to begin with. Songs like Afterlife and Levitate have some really good production. The first 30 seconds hook you in, but the vocals and melodies just aren't very complimentary and left me feeling unfulfilled by the time the songs were finished. There were a handful of songs I thought were good though. My Eyes is a rigid killer opener. Want You Like I Do, although it is sappy as hell, is bangingly dreamy. And I really love the closer, Erase the Outside World. It's really chill and technologically breezy in a way. Like, I really liked it. Overall, I mean, I think it's okay. Definitely not the Anix's best, but there is still a lot to appreciate. This is a pretty skeletal singer-songwriter album for the most part. Most of the track listing sports some pretty scant and basic acoustic instrumentals outside of 2 songs, and Jana's lyrical approach attempts to be cryptic and bewildering as she seemingly ruminates about prior events, especially in the first half, but it's not written well enough where it peaks and keeps my interest. The first 4 or so songs didn't stick with me even after going over them a couple of times. The second half has some more eventful stuff though. Songs like Man Meandering, A Good Thing, Jordan, and Driving just have way more depth to them in virtually every way, instrumentally and lyrically, and to me were the best songs by far. I guess I'm just more attracted to like fuller sounds. Optimism is just a tale of 2 halves for me in the end. I didn't really like the first half. I enjoyed most of the second half. Overall though, not my kind of singer-songwriter album. It's eh. Aurora's music has always tried to be artsy yet accessible and not really leaning too far in either direction. Each album release of hers sees her trending more and more to the artsy side, but not far enough to loosen the grip of the accessibility approach that she goes for. A lot of the instrumentation here is pretty and luscious with swaths of strings and orchestral backings. It's prime movie trailer stuff for sure, but it's not overly dramatic to the point where it comes off as like absurdly overproduced. It's just the right touch with songs like This Could Be a Dream, Exist for Love, and Dangerous Thing. The obligatory electropop songs were actually pretty fun too. I liked Giving Into the Love, Cure for Me, and A Temporary High the most. Aurora's voice still has that regal mystique about it that I enjoy, but some of the songs just rung a bit hollow to me, lacking a decisive direction in regards to whether it's trying to be artsy or accessible. Aurora's music has always had a nice sound to it, but it just feels like it's lacking a certain depth or gravitas to make it more memorable for me. But I think this is a very enjoyable alternative pop album on par with her other albums for me, and I definitely admire her consistency. This album has been quite polarizing amongst Boris faithful, some arguing that they have done this sound better in the past, and some say it is their most forward-thinking effort yet. I think it is good, although I will admit it's not something that's in the realm of their other quality works by any means. Their focus on drone and ambience with some vestiges of experimental rock and even dream pop produces some pretty creepy stuff. The opening, for example, has a droning progression that sounds like a materialization of evil that is swallowing the world whole. Isolina is like a Wraith's lullaby set in the future, and the 9-minute You Will Know melts all the genres I mentioned before into a well-paced and satisfying song that's well worth its runtime. And Beyond Good and Evil is definitely my favorite song on here. How it goes from its desolate beginning to a relatively hollow conclusion is somehow uplifting in a weird way. The problems I have with it had to do with some tracks not really adding anything to the table. They seem to echo certain sounds from other songs, but not building off of them in any special way, kind of creating moments of stagnation in the track listing, serving as like mundane walkways to the grander and more ambitious set pieces. I wouldn't mind another album akin to something like this though. Like I said, I thought it was good. Not anything new for Rich Brian by any means, but, you know, it proved to be a fun listen to me. You got your trap flavored stuff like Get Your Mans and Lagoon, but what I really enjoyed here were how a couple of these songs have these beat switches that go from being crunk and turned up to these more mellow and introspective pieces, which to me is like representing this in-the-moment duality somebody goes through, going from being braggadocious and crass behavior that comes off as like a front to being open and fearfully confused about oneself and one's future. The 2 shining examples of those songs would be New Tooth and Sunny, which were my favorites for sure. It's a neat little 4-song EP. I'm definitely looking forward to more. I'm pretty familiar with Lotus Juice from hearing him off of the Persona 3 and Persona 5 Royal soundtracks, but I never really got the chance to check out his solo stuff outside of Persona, so I thought this new album was as good as time as any to start. And it was comforting to hear that his musical personality from the Persona soundtracks carry over into his solo work, because his presence and charisma and ear for beats and hooks are pretty apparent, and he can win you over pretty effortlessly, especially on the opener Kageki done with which opens up with this jubilant jazz fanfare and this heightened performance to try and get the crowd involved. Like what's not to love about it? The production is great across the album with plenty of flavorful and distinct beats. Other songs I loved include Masquerade, Day by Day. I love how like G-funky Go-Kart is, and These Days I feel was like a very inspirational way to end things. The tracks I didn't really come around to include Rollin', Drop It Like, and It's On, and that's because the tough guy / don't fuck with me rap approach, bravado that he puts up doesn't really have a lot of oomph to it. Felt phony in a way, but that's just me. I'm just typically not a fan of that kind of like rapping approach unless you got a lot of flair and style to back it up. But I really like this album. It's nice to hear Lotus Juice still out and about. If you were looking for a Latin jazz punk black metal album sprinkled with hints of rumba, look no further than this album because it absolutely rips. From start to finish, it is loaded with fiery and feisty tracks with harsh riffs, guttural screams, some Latin jazz, eccentric horn work, and even some interesting sample work too, most notably the Mario sound effects of him jumping, so that was cool, real gamer moment. The arrangements for each song share the approach of building momentum and then redirecting it for some explosive finishes, but it never got samey to me. I was able to enjoy each track for a vastly different reason. There's a lot of flavor here that ranges from being hellacious to rebellious to even danceable at times. The only issue that arose during my time with this album was that I wish that the peaks and crescendos had a little more oomph to them, as I found the album kind of lacking those pivotal moments to elevate itself to a higher level, but even without them, this album is a ton of fun. It's awesome. Don't sleep on it. Tongues is my introduction to Tanya's music, and wow, what an intro. She is an indigenous throat singer, and she is quite pissed on this album, as highlighted briefly on the song Colonizer, where every repetition of the word colonizer grows more and more hateful, like she's disgusted to even say it by the end of the song. The musical backdrop she uses is composed of these like electronic / post-industrial sounds that permeates throughout the soundscape, which achieves being interestingly arranged as well as never overtaking Tanya, giving her verses and vocals all the shine it needs. That generational anger she brings forth is materialized in these throat singing segments where she is mangling her vocal cords with these blackened growls and snarls. My favorite two songs on the album, however, are when Tanya is tender and more vulnerable with the songs Do Not Fear Love and Earth Monster. The former song deals with opening yourself up to being loved despite whatever trauma and paranoia and fear is keeping you from doing so. It's done in a very self-fulfilling way though, where she's emphasizing to be thankful that you have your fears looking out for you and to love them in a way that will make you whole. Very unique perspective. I don't think I've ever heard anything like that before. And Earth Monster is a sweet tribute to her daughter, where Tanya links herself to her daughter physically and spiritually as an extension of herself. Tongues is just such an authentic album with its messages and sentiments. It's refreshing and also very eye-opening too. Not often does an album kind of come off to me as out of my element, but I'm glad I listened to it. It's my favorite album of the week. I highly recommend, and I will definitely check out her previous stuff. That concludes this episode of last week's music. I would love to hear your thoughts on any albums that you may have listened to that I haven't heard, or if you have heard these albums, you know, what are your thoughts? Please like the video. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing, and thank you for watching the video. I will see you next time.